My friends, you were never meant to beg for your desires with words. You were not placed here to plead with life, or to ask timidly from some distant power in the sky. You were given the gift of creation itself, the power to feel, to imagine, and to become. And that power does not speak in language. Feeling is the true language of creation, far more potent than words or affirmations. Words are symbols, tools we use to communicate ideas to others. But they are not the actual force that moves reality. It is what lies beneath the words that matters: the vibration, the emotional tone, the state of being from which those words arise. When you speak from a place of lack, fear, or uncertainty, even if your words are positive, the creative substance of life does not respond to the words themselves. It responds to the frequency behind them. This is why people often say affirmations like, "I am wealthy," or "I am loved" over and over again, and yet see no change. If those words are spoken from a place of doubt or desperation, they do not align with the state they are attempting to create. The words are hollow. But when you feel wealth, when you feel loved, even if you say nothing aloud, your world begins to reflect that inner assumption. Everything you experience is a reflection of your internal state, your consciousness, your vibration. You do not need to explain to the universe what you want. You need only embody it. You must enter the state where the desire is already fulfilled, not as a future hope, but as a current reality. This state has a feeling tone. It's subtle but unmistakable. It's a sense of certainty, relief, calm, joy. The moment you relax into the felt knowing that it is already done, you have moved into creative alignment. You have shifted your vibration from lack to fulfillment, from desire to possession. Think of a tuning fork. It does not need to convince another fork to vibrate. It simply hums at its frequency, and that frequency causes the other to resonate in harmony. This is how creation works. You do not convince reality to give you something. You become the vibration of that which you seek, and reality harmonizes with you. Feeling is your tuning fork. When you feel yourself to be a certain way, the world begins to shape itself around that perception. Not because you commanded it with words, but because you aligned with its vibration. This is why imagination is not just visualization. To imagine effectively, you must feel the scene you are creating. You must sink into the atmosphere of it, embody the state of it. If you imagine being wealthy, do not merely see yourself with money. Feel the inner security, the confidence, the ease that wealth brings. If you imagine love, feel the warmth, the connection, the assurance of being cherished. These feelings are the true language of creation. When you speak in this language, silently, vibrationally, the world listens. In this realm, silence is more powerful than speech, because silence allows you to bypass the intellect and enter the emotional body. It is there, in feeling, that the seeds of creation are planted. Your future does not unfold from what you say about it, but from how you feel about it now. The more deeply you feel from the end, the more swiftly the outer world conforms. So the next time you want to change something in your life, don't start with a declaration. Start with a shift in feeling. Ask yourself, gee, how would I feel if it were already true? Then dwell in that feeling. Linger in it. Let it become your new home. The world will follow, for it has no choice. It can only reflect the vibration you hold. To bring anything into your life, you must assume the state of the wish fulfilled. Not as a distant hope or future goal, but as a present reality already alive within you. This is not about pretending or forcing belief. It is about entering the feeling of fulfillment so completely that you no longer seek the thing you desire. You are it. You inhabit it. You carry it with you in consciousness as naturally as you carry your own name. Desire is not a signal of what is missing. It is a signpost pointing toward a version of yourself that already exists. But to access that version, you must step into its state. You must abandon the version of you who lacks and assume the version who already has. This assumption is not something you chant or declare. It is something you feel. It is quiet, internal, and deeply personal. It happens in the imagination, in the stillness of the mind, where you become aware of your power to shift your inner atmosphere. When you assume the state of the wish fulfilled, you are not asking for something. You are claiming it, not through words or demands, but through vibration, through identity. You walk, speak, and think from the end, from the place where the desire has already unfolded. This changes your behavior, your reactions, and most importantly, your relationship to life. You no longer look to the outer world for validation, because you know that reality is simply catching up to your assumption. Every state is a level of consciousness, a dimension of being. Poverty is a state, wealth is a state, loneliness is a state, love is a state. These are not external conditions but internal identities. When you shift your state, your outer world must rearrange itself to match it. That is law. The world is not fixed. It is elastic, fluid, and entirely obedient to your dominant assumption. But it only obeys what you persist in feeling, not what you merely think about occasionally. It is not enough to say, I am wealthy, if you still feel poor. It is not enough to visualize success if you still identify with failure. You must cross over the invisible bridge from wanting to being. You do this by saturating your imagination with the feeling that the desire is already yours. You see yourself as the person you wish to be, and more importantly, you feel from that person's perspective. You ask, how would I feel if I were already this? And then dwell in that feeling, not for a moment, but consistently. You may not see instant evidence in the physical world. That does not matter. The outer world is slow and reflective, while the inner world is fast and generative. Do not judge by appearances. Persist in your new state. Treat it as real because it is. Consciousness is the only reality. What you accept inwardly must become your experience outwardly. The world cannot resist a state that is truly assumed. Assumption is not strain. It is surrender. It is letting go of the old self and allowing the new self to take its place. Not in theory, but in feeling. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are claiming that which is yours by right of consciousness. You are stepping into a timeline where the desire is already fact. And once you occupy that timeline emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, the world bends to mirror your change. So live as though it were already true. Think from the end. React from the end. Speak from the end. Your imagination is the womb of your future, and the state you occupy now is the seed. Nurture it with feeling, and it will grow into form. The world has no choice but to respond. Your external world is not separate from you. It is not acting independently, deciding what to give or withhold based on effort, chance, or merit. It is a mirror, precise and impersonal, reflecting back the inner state you carry within. Every circumstance, every person, every event you encounter is shaped by the dominant vibration of your consciousness. If you look closely and honestly, you will see your outer world is the perfect echo of your inner world. This is why change must begin within. You cannot force the world to become what you are not already being internally. If you are vibrating lack, you may work hard, speak positive words, even take bold action. But what you attract will continue to reflect that sense of absence. You may say, I want success. But if your inner dialogue is full of fear, doubt, and limitation, your experience will echo that. The universe is not responding to your words. It is responding to the feeling behind them. Vibration is not a mystery. It is the emotional tone, the mood, the assumption you live in day after day. You may be unaware of it because it often feels so familiar. It is the emotional home you return to when you're not trying. Some people live in the vibration of anxiety, others in hope, others in frustration, and still others in peace or confidence. Whatever that baseline vibration is, life conforms to it. Not because you deserve it or don't deserve it, but because that's the frequency you are offering, and reality must match it. This is why effort alone does not guarantee change. You can work tirelessly, but if you remain in a vibration of struggle, you will keep attracting circumstances that reflect struggle. On the other hand, a person who calmly assumes success, who vibrates with assurance and ease, may appear to exert less effort, yet everything seems to flow in their favor. It is not luck, it is alignment. To shift your life, you must first shift your vibration. And this does not come through logic or force. It comes through feeling. You must begin to live in the emotional state that matches the life you desire. If you want love, you must embody the vibration of being lovable, chosen, adored. If you want abundance, you must dwell in the inner certainty that you are supported, that wealth is your natural state. If you want health, you must feel whole even before the body confirms it. The world is not leading you. You are leading it. You are not the cause. The moment you change your inner state and sustain it, the outer reality must yield. It may take time to unfold because physical reality is slow to reflect. But the change begins immediately. The mirror cannot help but reflect what is placed before it. It is not a question of if, but when. You don't have to control the details. Life knows how to organize itself around your vibration. Your job is not to force outcomes, but to maintain the state that would naturally include those outcomes. This is why your feelings are sacred. They are the truest indicators of your current creative point of attraction. When you feel aligned, peaceful, grateful, confident, you are drawing into your world all that corresponds to those states. So observe your world, not as a victim of it, but as its source. Whatever you see is not a fixed fact. It is a reflection of who you have been. And if you want to see something new, you must first be something new in consciousness. This is the key. Reality does not create your vibration creates your reality. Words are powerful tools when they are aligned with your inner state, but when used without genuine feeling, they become empty repetitions that often reinforce the very lack you're trying to escape. Many people try to speak their desires in existence through affirmations and declarations, saying things like, I am rich, I am loved, or am healthy, believing that repetition alone will produce transformation. But if these words are spoken from a state of disbelief, worry, or emotional resistance, the subconscious mind receives a very different message. It does not obey the literal meaning of your words. It obeys the emotional energy behind them. When someone says, I am abundant, but internally feels fearful about money or insecure about their financial future, the vibration being sent out is not one of abundance but of lack. The subconscious doesn't hear, I am abundant. It hears, I wish I were abundant, but I am not. This internal contradiction can actually delay or block manifestation because the emotional truth, the feeling, is out of alignment with the words. This is why it is often more effective to say nothing at all and focus instead on shifting your state. The universe, or the creative power that governs experience, responds not to words but to vibration, to your emotional frequency, your inner assumption. It listens to what you feel to be true. And feelings, unlike words, cannot be faked. They are the honest language of your consciousness. Words, when used correctly, can reinforce a felt state. When you already feel prosperous, saying, I am wealthy, carries power because it affirms an existing inner reality. But when the words are used in an attempt to cover up doubt or override fear, they can become a form of resistance. They can become noise. Instead of helping you shift, they keep you circling around the same emotional state, hoping that repetition will change the feeling. But it doesn't work that way. The true work is not in repeating phrases, but in shifting your identity, your concept of self. Who are you when you're not trying to become something? That is your current state of being, your vibration. If you continue to operate from a self-image that believes in limitation, rejection, or failure, no amount of verbal affirmation will create lasting change. But if you go within and begin to feel differently, if you begin to embody the emotions of confidence, fulfillment, and worthiness, then even without saying a word, your life will begin to change. This is why silence can be more powerful than speech. In silence, you bypass the conscious effort to convince and drop into the deeper waters of imagination and feeling. In that quiet place, you begin to assume. You begin to feel. You begin to know. Not because you've been told, but because you've entered into the experience of already having your desire. In that state, you no longer need to convince yourself or anyone else. You're no longer trying to affirm something into being. You're simply being it. When the feeling is real, the words become optional. You might speak, but only to express the fullness of what is already alive within you. There is no longer any desperation, no need to grasp. You know what you are, and the world must catch up. So if you find yourself using words that don't match your feeling, pause. Step back. Go within. Ask yourself, what state am I truly in right now? Then do the real work, not of talking, but of shifting. Move into the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not with force, but with gentle assumption. Once the feeling is true, the words, if you choose to use them, will carry the weight of truth. Until then, it is better to feel in silence than to speak in contradiction. Imagination is not idle fantasy. It is the original act of creation. Everything you see in the world, every invention, every structure, every relationship, every condition, existed first in the unseen realm of imagination. Before anything becomes form, it begins as thought, shaped by emotion, sustained by belief. Your imagination is not just a place where ideas flicker and fade. It is the womb of your reality. It is where futures are conceived, nurtured, and brought into being. What you vividly imagine and emotionally accept as true is what you are creating. Most people imagine unconsciously. They worry, replay negative scenarios, dwell on fears and frustrations, and then are surprised when those very things materialize in their lives. But this is not chance. This is law. The subconscious mind takes your imagination seriously. It cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. So when you use your imagination deliberately, when you begin to craft mental scenes that reflect your desires already fulfilled, you are planting seeds in the soil of reality. But imagination must be more than visual. It must be emotional. To see something in your mind is a start, but to feel it as real is what gives it life. When you imagine, you are not daydreaming or wishing. You are participating in creation. And the most powerful way to do this is to step into the scene. Make it three-dimensional. Engage all your senses. Hear the sounds, feel the textures, breathe the air of that reality. More importantly, feel the emotions you would feel if it were already true. That emotional tone is the vibration you are offering, and it is that vibration that shapes your world. You do not imagine to get something. You imagine to become something. When you dwell consistently in a mental and emotional state, you begin to shift your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone striving toward a goal. You see yourself as already being the person who lives that outcome. This is the transformation. And once your self-concept changes, the world rearranges to match it. Imagination is sacred. It is your direct line to the infinite. When used intentionally, it lifts you out of present limitations and transports you into a state of fulfillment. From that state, you no longer ask, how will it happen? Because you are already living in the assumption that it has. And what you assume to be true with feeling becomes true in time. The outer world will reflect it because it must. It is bound to the inner blueprint you provide. The error most people make is treating imagination as a tool of escape rather than a tool of embodiment. They imagine their desires in moments of longing, but then return to their daily lives and reinforce the old state through thought, speech, and behavior. This creates conflict within the self, and the results are inconsistent. But when imagination becomes your dwelling place, when it becomes where you live emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, then the external must conform to the internal. You are always imagining something. You are always in a state. The question is not whether you are creating, but what you are creating. The world you see is not fixed. It is a projection, a reflection of your inner world. And the clearer, more consistent, and more emotionally charged your inner scenes, the faster your outer world reflects them. So return to your imagination often. Not as a visitor, but as a resident. Let it become real to you. Let it become more vivid than your current circumstances. The moment you do, reality begins to shift. Not because you forced it to, but because you aligned with the version of yourself where the desire is already done. That alignment is the essence of creation. Silence is not emptiness, it is the space where creation takes form. In the stillness of your mind, beyond the noise of thought and the chatter of the world, lies the true creative power. It is in this silence that you make contact with your deeper self. The part of you that knows, without effort or words, that you are already what you seek to become. Creation does not begin with striving. It begins with stillness. It begins with an inward shift that requires no explanation, no validation, and no performance. It requires only that you feel. Most people are conditioned to believe that power lies in action, in speaking, in doing. But the greatest power is found in the quiet moment when you move into the state of the wish fulfilled and rest there. Not anxiously, not with hope, but with the calm confidence that it is already done. In this state of being, you are not trying to make something happen. You are allowing what already is to emerge. You are becoming receptive to the unseen, and from that receptive place, your world begins to change. Stillness is the gateway to imagination. When the mind is quiet, the door to the subconscious opens. It is through this door that all manifestation flows. If you fill it with noise, worry talking, constant stimulation, you crowd out the creative impulse. But when you go within and surrender to silence, the inner world becomes alive. You begin to feel the truth of your desires, and not as future events, but as present realities. And that feeling, that quiet knowing, is what draws the unseen into form. You do not need to announce your desires to the world. You do not need to convince others or even yourself with constant repetition. What you need is to feel your desire into being, to sit in the silence and allow the mood of fulfillment to wash over you, to imagine the scene that would imply your desire is real, and then simply rest in that scene, not rushing it, not controlling it, but gently experiencing it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. This inner calm, this relaxed certainty, is the mark of someone who has entered the creative state. In silence, you bypass the conscious mind with all its doubts and limitations. You move directly into the realm of the subconscious, which accepts as true whatever you persist in feeling. This is why inner stillness is not passive. It is deeply active on the level of consciousness. It is where the seed is planted and takes root. And like any seed, it does not need to be pulled or pushed. It needs to be nurtured with quiet belief, with continued assumption, with the warmth of unwavering feeling. True power does not shout, it whispers. And in the silence of your imagination, those whispers become commands that shape your reality. There is no force involved, only alignment. And alignment happens when you release effort, release doubt, and dwell in the energy of already having. This is the paradox of spiritual creation. When you stop trying to force, you begin to receive. When you stop seeking, you start being. Stillness is not avoidance. It is clarity. It is you stepping out of the reactive mind and into the creative mind. It is you choosing to live from within, to respond from your center rather than from circumstances. When you become still, the truth of who you are rises. And from that truth, all things become possible. You don't have to do more. You have to be more. You must first be still. In that stillness, in that deep inner quiet, the vibration of your fulfilled desire begins to radiate. You become it. And as you become it, the world moves. Not because you moved the world, but because you moved yourself.